What if I tell you that everything you think you know about money is only a shadow of the reality that is already within you? A mere reflection of the beliefs you hold deep inside your mind, and that the moment you understand this, you will begin to see wealth not as something to chase, but as something that responds to the state of your consciousness, quietly appearing where your inner vision allows it to. And although most people spend their lives hustling and scrambling, believing that effort alone creates abundance, the truth is far more subtle and powerful, because money is nothing more than a mirror of your imagination, a shape that takes form in response to your feelings, your convictions, and your unshakable assumptions about yourself. And when you pause to notice how often scarcity, fear, and doubt dominate your thinking, you realize that these shadows are precisely what keep the riches of life just out of reach. Yet if you dare to imagine yourself already in possession of the life you desire, if you allow yourself to feel the emotions, the comfort, and the satisfaction of wealth, you set in motion forces that are far greater than anything external, shaping circumstances to match the state you have assumed. And as you continue to explore this truth, you will notice how easily opportunities that once seemed impossible begin to appear effortlessly, like doors opening that you never even knocked on, revealing paths that align with your imagined reality. And every choice you make, every thought you nurture, becomes an act of creation, weaving the shadow into substance, transforming lack into plenty. And in this process, the boundary between what you perceive as real and what you imagine dissolves, until money ceases to be an object of desire and becomes instead an inevitable consequence of the inner world you inhabit. And in understanding this, you begin to live in a state where wealth flows as naturally as breathing, where resistance fades, and where the power to shape your destiny has always been, and will always remain, quietly nested within the imagination you dare to use, awaiting only the clarity of your focus, the strength of your assumption, and the courage to feel fully as though the life you want is already yours, so that nothing outside you need ever control your abundance again, because you have discovered the ultimate secret that turns shadows into reality. And once you grasp that money is a shadow, you begin to notice how your entire life has been shaped by the subtle assumptions you have carried, the invisible rules and limitations that have dictated what you believed was possible. And as this awareness grows, you realize that every act of striving, every moment of anxiety over bills or opportunities has been a reflection of your internal state rather than the measure of your worth or effort, which means that the power to change your circumstances lies not in working harder or chasing endlessly, but in transforming the feelings and beliefs that form the blueprint of your reality. And when you allow yourself to pause and feel as though abundance has already arrived, as though every need is already met, you unlock a current that begins to move through your life in ways that logic cannot explain, opening doors that once seemed sealed and attracting people, ideas, and opportunities that align perfectly with the vision you hold, so that instead of laboring for results, you start to notice how effortlessly life responds when your inner world is in harmony with your desires. And this is where imagination becomes your most powerful tool, for it is through imagining and feeling as though you already possess what you seek that the shadow of money gains substance. And as you practice this consistently, you find yourself making decisions from a place of confidence and assurance, where fear and doubt no longer dictate your actions, and you observe how synchronistic events, once dismissed as coincidence, now appear as unmistakable guidance, confirming that the energy you project is shaping the reality you experience. And as the days pass, you find that abundance is no longer a distant goal, but a living presence in your life, reflecting back to you the conviction you hold inside, and you begin to see wealth in forms you never expected, opportunities disguised as challenges, lessons disguised as setbacks, all conspiring to align you with the state you have assumed, until it becomes clear that the external world is merely an echo of your inner vision. And with this understanding, you move through life with a lightness and confidence that transforms even mundane experiences into evidence of your creative power, realizing that the shadow of money only persists where belief is weak. and disappears entirely when imagination and feeling work together to claim it as already yours. And this revelation carries a quiet, unstoppable force, preparing you to step into a life where wealth, freedom, and opportunity are inseparable from the state of mind you cultivate. And as you begin to see how your inner state governs every aspect of abundance, you start to recognize the unparalleled role that imagination plays in creating wealth. For it is not in chasing money with frantic effort or calculating strategy that you manifest the life you desire, but in vividly seeing, feeling, and inhabiting the reality you wish to experience, where every detail matters and every sensation contributes to shaping the external world. And when you allow yourself to imagine not as a fleeting daydream, but as a living, breathing experience, your subconscious mind begins to align all your actions, decisions, and perceptions with that imagined state, weaving circumstances that reflect what you hold as real. Which means that every small thought, every subtle feeling, has the power to attract or repel opportunities depending on how firmly it is assumed. And as this understanding deepens, you notice that the world no longer feels random or uncontrollable, but like a canvas responding to the brushstrokes of your consciousness, where your inner assumptions create patterns that draw toward you exactly what you believe is possible. And this is why the act of imagining becomes far more powerful than any external effort. Because while action alone can produce temporary results, imagination creates the invisible architecture from which lasting abundance emerges. And when you embrace this fully, you begin to observe how effortless manifestations arise, how seemingly impossible outcomes become inevitable, and how relationships, money, and opportunities all bend toward the state you consistently hold, so that life itself becomes a mirror reflecting your inner convictions. And the more intensely and consistently you imagine, the more tangible the shadow of money becomes, until it can no longer be mistaken for illusion, and instead it takes form, substance, and presence in your life. And the subtle art of living as though already wealthy transforms ordinary days into a stream of experiences that confirm your creative power, so that even challenges serve as guides, teaching you where belief must be strengthened, and gradually, with each imagined victory, you step further into mastery, understanding that imagination is the engine that propels the shadow into reality, and that by learning to live inside the feeling of abundance first, you are no longer chasing wealth, but commanding it to appear effortlessly in alignment with the life you already inhabit. And as you continue to explore the unseen forces that govern wealth, you begin to recognize the illusion of lack that so many people accept as reality, noticing how fear and doubt have been quietly shaping their experience while convincing them that abundance is something outside their reach. And when you pause to consider that scarcity exists only because it is assumed, you realize that the life you desire has always been available, waiting patiently for you to claim it through conscious belief. And the moment you shift your attention from what is missing to what is already present in potential, the shadow of money starts to take shape, revealing opportunities that were previously invisible. And as you embrace this perspective, the contrast between struggle and ease becomes strikingly clear. For those who cling to lack perpetuate it, while those who dwell in the certainty of plenty invite its manifestation with an almost magnetic force. And this is why changing your internal dialogue about wealth is not merely important, but essential, because each thought carries energy that either constructs or dissolves the reality you experience. And as you practice seeing abundance everywhere, even in the smallest details of life, you begin to feel an inner expansion that radiates outward, influencing your decisions, relationships, and the situations that appear before you. And it becomes evident that life itself responds not to demand or insistence, but to the state you maintain, so that by assuming fullness and sufficiency, you align with the natural flow of prosperity. And while external circumstances may seem unpredictable, they are merely reflections of your ongoing assumptions. And as you refine your awareness, you notice how synchronicities appear, how doors open without effort, and how your perception of money transforms from something pursued to something that follows you wherever your consciousness goes. And in this revelation, the fear that once accompanied financial concerns fades, replaced by confidence and clarity, allowing you to move through the world with a sense of power that feels both effortless and undeniable, so that the shadow of lack is gradually replaced by the tangible presence of abundance, confirming that mastery begins not with the accumulation of wealth, but with the inner alignment that makes wealth inevitable. And once you begin to internalize the idea that abundance is a reflection of your inner state, you start to understand the power of feeling wealthy now, realizing that the sensation of already having money is far more important than the actual accumulation of it, because it is the feeling that sets in motion the chain of events that manifest your desires. And when you allow yourself to dwell in the emotion of satisfaction, security, and ease, even if your external circumstances have not yet caught up, you create a magnetic energy that draws everything necessary into your experience. And it becomes clear that effort without feeling is often wasted, while feeling without effort orchestrates the circumstances that make action effortless and perfectly timed. And as this principle becomes evident, you notice how your choices begin to flow more naturally, how opportunities that once seemed hidden now appear as if by design, and how relationships, investments, and decisions all align with the inner state you cultivate. And the contrast between struggling for wealth and embodying it becomes undeniable. For those who live in the tension of lack attract more tension, while those who immerse themselves in the richness of imagination experience a reality that bends toward abundance. And it is in this subtle yet transformative shift that you recognize why the majority of people remain trapped in cycles of want, for they fail to feel before they receive. And when you consistently practice feeling, your imagination becomes an invisible architect, building circumstances, connections, and financial outcomes in perfect harmony with the life you assume. And even setbacks, when viewed from this perspective, serve as reminders to strengthen your feeling of certainty rather than challenges to resist or fear. And gradually, as the shadow of wealth solidifies into tangible presence, you find that money flows not only more freely, but also in ways that feel effortless, natural, and entirely aligned with your sense of self. And with each day, the power of feeling becomes more pronounced, revealing that financial mastery is less about strategy and more about the continuous cultivation of inner abundance, until it is impossible to separate the state of being from the experiences that manifest. And you finally understand that living as though you are already wealthy is not a practice, but a lifestyle. A conscious choice that transforms every thought, decision, and action into a seamless extension of the life you have imagined. And through this realization, the shadow of money fades completely, replaced by the unmistakable presence of the prosperity that has always awaited your assumption. And as you immerse yourself further into the understanding that money is a reflection of your inner world, you begin to see that your sense of self-worth is intimately connected to the abundance you experience. For every doubt, insecurity, or belief of inadequacy subtly shapes the financial reality that mirrors it. And when you recognize that money responds not to external circumstances, but to the value you assign to yourself, you begin to shift your focus inward, nurturing a sense of confidence, dignity, and deservingness that naturally attracts wealth. And it becomes clear that the most powerful form of financial mastery is not learned through study or effort alone, but through the cultivation of a self-image that aligns with the life you desire. And as this self-image strengthens, you notice how opportunities present themselves with ease, how people respond differently, and how challenges that once seemed insurmountable now serve as gentle guides rather than obstacles. And in this process, every thought, feeling, and action becomes a reflection of the state of being you maintain, which means that nurturing self-worth is not an abstract exercise, but a practical tool for shaping reality. And as you continue to embody a sense of value and abundance, the shadow of money begins to solidify into tangible outcomes, providing evidence of the internal shifts you have made. And it is in these moments that you understand the subtle yet profound difference between chasing wealth and commanding it. For those who have internalized self-worth, no longer negotiate with circumstances, but instead move with an assurance that attracts everything necessary to sustain their imagined reality. And the ease with which life now aligns with your assumptions reveals that the external world has always been a mirror, reflecting the value you see in yourself. And as you refine this awareness, your interactions, decisions, and opportunities continue to evolve in harmony with the state of being you consistently assume, until wealth, influence, and freedom cease to be distant goals and become inseparable from the consciousness you maintain. And through this deepening understanding, you realize that by nurturing a strong sense of self-worth, you are not only transforming your financial reality, but also shaping the entirety of your life experience, so that abundance, opportunity, and prosperity flow naturally, effortlessly, and consistently, echoing the inner mastery you have cultivated. And in this realization, you discover that the shadow of money has always been a reflection of self, waiting only for you to step fully into the awareness that you are deserving of everything you imagine. And as your awareness of self-worth and inner value deepens, you begin to see the practical application of Neville's assume the feeling technique, understanding that it is not merely a mental exercise, but a transformative practice that allows you to step fully into the reality you desire. And when you consciously assume the feeling of already having what you want, whether it is wealth, opportunity, or freedom, your subconscious mind begins to align every thought, choice, and action with that state, orchestrating circumstances that mirror your inner conviction. And it becomes apparent that the act of assuming is far more powerful than waiting for external confirmation, because the world responds not to what is lacking, but to the state you occupy in consciousness. And as you continue to inhabit the feeling of abundance, you notice how synchronicities increase. Doors open with surprising ease, and people, opportunities, and resources flow into your life as if guided by an unseen hand. And this process transforms ordinary decisions into effortless steps toward the life you imagined, allowing you to navigate challenges with confidence and clarity. For when you feel already wealthy and capable, the external world bends to support your assumed reality, and you recognize that the consistency of feeling is more important than the immediacy of results, because the shadow of money solidifies only when the inner state is unwavering. And as you practice this daily, you see how previously impossible outcomes become inevitable, how investments, relationships, and opportunities converge perfectly with your imagined life. And even setbacks serve as reminders to strengthen the feeling of certainty rather than sources of fear. And gradually, the alignment between imagination and experience becomes unmistakable, revealing that true mastery over abundance comes not from external effort, but from the deliberate and consistent assumption of the desired state. And in this revelation, you understand that the assume the feeling technique is less a tool and more a lifestyle, one that transforms every interaction, decision, and moment into evidence of the reality you have claimed. And through this understanding, the shadow of money ceases to be an obstacle, becoming instead a reflection of the certainty and clarity with which you live, confirming that the inner life always precedes the outer manifestation, and that by mastering this practice, you are not chasing wealth, but commanding it to appear effortlessly in alignment with the world you have imagined. And as you begin to notice the tangible effects of assuming the feeling, you start to see how money, shadows, and opportunities are intricately linked, realizing that every circumstance, encounter, and situation reflects the state of consciousness you maintain. And when you understand that opportunities do not appear randomly, but are drawn to the vibration you emit, you begin to pay closer attention to your thoughts, feelings, and habitual assumptions. For it is these subtle signals that either attract abundance or perpetuate scarcity. And as this awareness deepens, you notice how doors that were once closed now swing open effortlessly, how chance encounters lead to unexpected benefits, and how ideas that seemed out of reach suddenly present themselves with clarity. And it becomes evident that the quality of your inner life determines the quality of your external experience, so that financial challenges are not punishments, but indicators of where belief must be strengthened. And as you consistently inhabit a state of abundance, you see that opportunity is no longer dependent on timing, luck, or external effort, but arises naturally from the alignment between imagination and feeling. And in this state, You make decisions with confidence, act with assurance, and attract circumstances that confirm the reality you have assumed. And every obstacle that once appeared threatening now serves as a guidepost, redirecting your focus toward greater alignment. And the shadow of money begins to transform into substance as you embody the certainty that wealth is already present in your life. And as this flow continues, you recognize that external conditions are merely mirrors of your inner assumptions, so that by refining your consciousness, you can shape experiences, opportunities, and resources with precision. And with each passing day, you notice how easily life responds when your attention remains on abundance rather than lack, and how challenges, instead of halting progress, accelerate it by forcing the strengthening of belief. And gradually, the alignment between imagination, feeling, and external manifestation becomes undeniable, proving that mastery over opportunity and money is not a matter of circumstance, but of consistent inner assumption. And through this realization, you see that the world itself is a reflection of your consciousness, and that by learning to navigate and command this reflection, you have the power to transform every shadow of limitation into tangible abundance that responds to the certainty and clarity with which you live and feel. And as you continue to witness how opportunities align with your inner state, you begin to understand the importance of removing mental blocks to abundance, recognizing that every limiting belief, every deeply held doubt, and every fear about money has functioned like an invisible chain, quietly preventing the shadow from taking form and keeping prosperity just out of reach. And when you bring these hidden assumptions into conscious awareness, you gain the power to dissolve them, replacing hesitation with certainty, anxiety with assurance, and limitation with possibility. And it becomes clear that the act of clearing mental blocks is not about forcing results, but about creating inner space for abundance to flow, where the universe responds naturally to clarity. And as you release resistance, opportunities emerge effortlessly. Resources align with your intentions, and the external world begins to mirror the freedom and confidence you cultivate within. And in this process, you notice how past failures, setbacks, or disappointments no longer hold power over you, instead serving as markers for beliefs that have now been transmuted. And as you consistently practice this inner clearing, the shadow of money begins to solidify into substance, confirming that abundance is not something to be earned, but something to be assumed and inhabited. And every decision you make, every action you take, becomes an extension of the state of alignment you maintain, attracting circumstances, people, and resources that harmonize perfectly with your imagined reality. And gradually, life itself begins to feel effortless, guided by the certainty that comes from knowing your internal world shapes your external experience. And the contrast between striving and receiving becomes increasingly apparent, revealing that true mastery is not measured by effort, but by the coherence, clarity, and purity of your inner assumption. And with each day, the sense of flow grows stronger. Opportunities appear with increasing ease, and the tangible results of wealth, freedom, and abundance become undeniable, until the shadow of limitation dissolves entirely, leaving only the vibrant reality of what you have assumed and maintained within. And in this understanding, you realize that the mastery of money is inseparable from the mastery of your own consciousness, and that the life you have always desired exists fully in alignment with the state of being you now consistently embody. And as you gain clarity on the mental blocks that once held abundance at bay, you begin to see how Neville's principles intersect with what modern teachers call the law of attraction, realizing that the invisible forces that respond to your inner state are neither mystical nor random, but precise reflections of the assumptions you consistently hold. And when you understand this, it becomes clear that manifesting wealth is less about external effort and more about the deliberate cultivation of thoughts, feelings, and beliefs that align with the life you imagine. And as you practice focusing your consciousness on what is desired rather than what is feared, opportunities, ideas, and resources begin to converge in ways that defy conventional explanation, so that the life you once chased now arrives almost effortlessly, guided by the alignment of your inner world. And in this process, the contrast between those who struggle endlessly and those who allow life to flow naturally become starkly apparent. Where external circumstances respond only to the state of your consciousness, and no amount of external striving can substitute for inner alignment. And as you continue to refine your assumptions, you notice the subtle synchronizations, the chance encounters, and the unexpected solutions that appear, each one confirming that the law of attraction is not wishful thinking, but the precise effect of the state you occupy. And when you consistently imagine, feel, and assume the reality you desire, your inner world becomes the blueprint for everything that unfolds externally, guiding your decisions, relationships, and opportunities with effortless precision. And even challenges that arise now serve as calibration tools, teaching you where belief must be strengthened rather than discouraging you. And gradually, as your consciousness deepens, you recognize that life itself is an intricate reflection of your thoughts and feelings, and that mastery over money is inseparable from mastery over your own assumptions. And with each day, abundance becomes not only inevitable, but natural, flowing to you in perfect alignment with your imagined reality, until the shadow of scarcity is completely replaced by the substance of wealth, confirming that the creative power of your mind has always been the key to having it all. And through this understanding, you step into a life where money is no longer an object of pursuit, but a reflection of the certainty, clarity, and alignment that you now inhabit effortlessly. And as you deepen your understanding of the law of attraction in relation to money, you begin to notice the striking difference between visualizing wealth and actively chasing it, realizing that while chasing requires effort, tension, and constant adjustment, visualizing allows your consciousness to orchestrate reality in perfect harmony with the state you assume. And when you engage in detailed, immersive imagination, feeling every nuance of success, freedom, and abundance, you create an invisible blueprint that the external world cannot resist reflecting. And as this awareness grows, you observe how the smallest shifts in thought and feeling generate profound effects, from unexpected opportunities to synchronized encounters and effortless solutions to problems that once seemed insurmountable. And it becomes clear that visualizing is not a passive dream, but an active practice of alignment, where every imagined detail guides your choices, attention, and energy toward the life you seek. And in this practice, even setbacks become essential signposts, revealing areas where assumptions need strengthening. And as you consistently inhabit the feeling of already having wealth, the shadow of money gradually takes form, transforming into tangible circumstances, and the contrast between external hustle and internal alignment becomes undeniable. For those who chase see scarcity, friction, and delay, while those who visualize experience flow, ease, and certainty. And this principle extends beyond money, influencing relationships, creativity, and opportunities, demonstrating that the mind is the ultimate architect of life. And as you refine your visualization, the external world begins to mirror not just your desires, but the precision, clarity, and conviction with which you imagine. And every decision becomes a natural extension of your assumed reality, reinforcing abundance at every turn, until the boundary between imagination and experience dissolves, revealing that the reality you create externally is merely a reflection of the vivid, consistent state you inhabit internally. And through this mastery, you understand that the shadow of money has no independent power. It only solidifies when you allow your consciousness to command it into substance, transforming your life into a seamless expression of your deepest assumptions and imagined reality. And as you continue to practice the art of visualization, you begin to see how gratitude transforms shadows into reality, realizing that the act of appreciating what is already present amplifies the flow of abundance. And when you consciously express gratitude for even the smallest signs of progress, you send a clear signal to your subconscious that abundance is not only possible, but already in motion. And this recognition creates a momentum that draws opportunities, resources, and people into your life with remarkable ease. And as you immerse yourself in the feeling of thankfulness, you notice that obstacles lose their intensity, challenges become lessons, and every situation begins to feel like a guided step toward your imagined reality. And it becomes evident that gratitude is not just a polite habit, but a potent creative force, aligning your inner state with the outer manifestations you seek. And as this principle deepens, you observe how life responds almost magically when appreciation is consistently maintained, turning what once seemed like scarcity into a fertile ground for growth. And in this process, every encounter, every experience, and every decision becomes infused with the energy of abundance, reinforcing the reality you have imagined, and you begin to recognize that the shadow of money diminishes in proportion to the gratitude you cultivate. For the more fully you feel wealth in all its forms, the more substance it takes in your life, and even past mistakes, setbacks, or delays become part of a cohesive story of expansion rather than barriers. And with each passing day, the flow of opportunities, inspiration, and resources increases, responding to the harmony and alignment you maintain until abundance becomes a natural, unbroken part of your daily experience. And through this consistent practice, you discover that money, opportunities, and prosperity are never external to you, but reflections of the inner state you nurture, and that by living in gratitude, you are not waiting for wealth to appear. You are actively creating the reality in which it is inevitable. And this revelation transforms every action, thought, and intention into evidence that the shadow of money is dissolving into the tangible, effortless abundance that is now fully aligned with the life you have imagined. And in embracing gratitude, you find yourself not only wealthy in circumstance but rich in clarity, certainty, and the unshakable conviction that abundance has always been, and will always be, your natural state. And as the power of gratitude solidifies your inner alignment, you begin to understand the transformative effect of living as if wealth already exists, realizing that when you carry yourself with the confidence, ease, and assurance of someone who has already attained financial freedom, the external world responds in perfect harmony with that state, and every decision, action, and opportunity begins to unfold effortlessly, guided by the invisible yet undeniable current of your assumed reality. And as this way of being becomes habitual, you notice how challenges that once seemed threatening now pass with ease, how circumstances that previously demanded struggle now bend naturally to accommodate your flow, and how the feeling of abundance permeates even the mundane moments of life, transforming ordinary experiences into affirmations of wealth. And it becomes evident that the outer world is not dictating your reality. Rather, it is a mirror reflecting the state you consistently maintain. And as you continue to act, think, and feel as someone already abundant, synchronicities multiply, resources appear unexpectedly, and opportunities align with your intentions in ways that seem almost miraculous. And this awareness deepens when you realize that living as if wealth already exists is not an act of pretense, but a deliberate cultivation of the inner state that generates tangible results. And the more fully you embody this state, the more effortlessly the shadow of money solidifies into substance, confirming that external accumulation is a natural consequence of internal alignment. And through this practice, your confidence grows, your clarity sharpens, and your decisions become guided by intuition rather than fear or doubt. And every encounter, choice, and moment is infused with the energy of abundance, reinforcing the reality you have assumed. And gradually, life itself becomes a seamless reflection of the wealth you inhabit, demonstrating that living as if already wealthy is not only the path to financial freedom, but also the foundation for a life of ease, creativity, and limitless possibility. And in this understanding, you move with an unshakable assurance that the life you desire is already yours, and that by embracing this state fully, you are actively co-creating a reality in which wealth, opportunity, and prosperity are as natural and inevitable as breathing. And through this continuous embodiment, the shadow of money fades entirely, leaving only the vibrant and unmistakable presence of abundance that mirrors the certainty and power of your inner consciousness. And as you embody the state of living as if wealth already exists, you begin to notice the profound connection between money and identity, realizing that who you believe yourself to be ultimately dictates the level of abundance you attract. And when you expand your self-concept to align with the life you desire, the external world naturally conforms to reflect that inner reality. And every thought, action, and decision becomes a reflection of the identity you assume. so that the life you imagine is no longer separate from who you are, but an inseparable extension of your consciousness. And as this understanding deepens, you recognize that limitations, doubts, and scarcity have always been rooted in a constrained self-perception, and that by consciously redefining your identity to one of wealth, capability, and deservingness, you dissolve the subtle barriers that have kept abundance just out of reach. And the moment you begin to feel, think, and act from this elevated identity, circumstances, people, and opportunities begin to align seamlessly with the reality you now inhabit, and it becomes clear that external wealth is merely a reflection of the internal state of being you consistently maintain, so that every financial outcome is a direct expression of who you have assumed yourself to be. And as you continue to refine this identity, you notice how naturally confidence, clarity, and intuition guide your decisions, how obstacles become stepping stones rather than hindrances, and how opportunities previously unseen now emerge effortlessly, perfectly aligned with your expanded self-concept. And in this process, you understand that mastery over money is inseparable from mastery over identity. For the inner belief in your worth and capability creates the conditions for wealth to manifest without struggle. And as you consistently live in this elevated state, the shadow of limitation fades, replaced by the tangible presence of abundance, demonstrating that who you are internally always precedes what you experience externally. And by consciously embodying an identity of prosperity, you not only attract wealth, but also cultivate the confidence, clarity, and ease necessary to sustain it, ensuring that abundance flows naturally, continuously, and inevitably as a reflection of the self you now fully recognize and inhabit. And as your identity aligns with wealth and abundance, you begin to experience the subtle shift from fear to faith, realizing that the anxiety and uncertainty that once accompanied financial matters are no longer necessary, because your inner state now generates certainty. And when you cultivate this unwavering faith, the external world begins to reflect it, presenting opportunities, solutions, and resources that confirm the reality you have assumed. And as this transition deepens, you notice how effortlessly life flows when fear no longer dictates your choices, how decisions are guided by intuition rather than hesitation, and how even complex situations resolve with clarity and precision. And it becomes evident that fear is merely a signal that beliefs need realignment, while faith acts as the bridge connecting imagination to manifestation. And as you consistently replace doubt with trust, the shadow of scarcity loses its grip, allowing abundance to become the natural expression of your inner state. And in this process, you observe that challenges, rather than threatening your progress, serve as reminders to strengthen belief and maintain alignment. And with each act of faith, synchronicities multiply, resources converge, and opportunities appear effortlessly, reinforcing the certainty that wealth is not a distant goal, but an inevitable reflection of the state you inhabit. And gradually, you internalize the understanding that your imagination, assumptions, and feelings are more powerful than any external circumstance. And by living with unwavering faith, you no longer chase results, but instead allow life to orchestrate them in perfect timing. And through this shift, the external world becomes a mirror of your inner conviction, confirming that mastery over money is inseparable from mastery over trust in yourself and the process. And with each passing day, your confidence strengthens, fear dissolves, and abundance flows naturally, effortlessly, and continuously, until the shadow of limitation disappears entirely, leaving only the vibrant, tangible reality of wealth and opportunity fully aligned with the certainty, faith, and inner power you now embody. And in this realization, you step fully into a life where fear is replaced by trust, scarcity by abundance, and hesitation by the effortless flow of everything you desire, already responding to the state of being you maintain. And as your life begins to reflect faith and certainty, you start to see how generosity amplifies abundance, realizing that giving, whether through time, resources, or kindness, does not diminish wealth, but rather strengthens the flow of prosperity in your life. And when you give freely, without hesitation or expectation, you signal to your subconscious and the universe that you operate from a state of plenty rather than lack. And as this understanding grows, you notice how every act of generosity creates a ripple effect, opening doors, attracting opportunities, and aligning circumstances that continue to expand your experience of abundance. And it becomes evident that the shadow of money diminishes when it is shared, because giving affirms your confidence in its continual presence. And as you practice this consistently, your relationships, collaborations, and financial outcomes all begin to shift in harmony with the energy of openness and trust. And even situations that once felt competitive or limited now transform into spaces of cooperation and mutual benefit, illustrating that wealth is not a finite resource, but an energy that multiplies when circulated. And in this process, you realize that true prosperity is inseparable from generosity. Because the inner assumption of abundance is confirmed externally when resources flow through you freely. And the more you give, the more effortlessly life provides, reinforcing your confidence in the inevitability of wealth. And as this pattern becomes natural, you notice how opportunities appear precisely where your generosity has aligned with intention, how unexpected resources show up when least anticipated, and how the world seems to respond as though abundance is being mirrored back to you. And gradually, the energy of giving transforms your perception of money from a static object to a living reflection of your inner state. And in this alignment, wealth, freedom, and creativity all converge seamlessly, demonstrating that the shadow of limitation only exists where generosity and trust are withheld. And through this understanding, you step into a life where giving enhances receiving, where abundance flows unimpeded, and where every act of sharing reinforces the reality that money, opportunity, and prosperity are natural consequences of the inner state you consistently inhabit, creating a self-perpetuating cycle of effortless wealth that mirrors the confidence, clarity, and openness of your consciousness. And as generosity becomes a natural extension of your consciousness, you begin to understand the role of persistence and patience, realizing that abundance does not always appear instantaneously, but unfolds in perfect alignment with the inner state you maintain. And when you consistently hold the feeling of already having wealth, opportunities and resources begin to arrange themselves with precision, often in ways that require quiet patience rather than hurried action. And it becomes clear that persistence is not about forcing outcomes, but about maintaining alignment through every circumstance, allowing life to respond naturally to your assumed state. And as you cultivate this steady focus, you notice how setbacks, delays, or unexpected twists no longer induce anxiety, but serve as gentle reminders to strengthen your belief and remain steady. And the shadow of scarcity begins to dissipate as your inner certainty grows, confirming that what is imagined and assumed eventually manifests. And as this understanding deepens, you recognize that impatience or doubt only creates resistance, while patience and persistence amplify the invisible forces that bring your desires into reality. And every day spent in alignment, consistently feeling and assuming abundance, reinforces the pattern of effortless manifestation, so that opportunities, resources, and solutions converge with increasing ease, and even complex challenges resolve harmoniously when approached from this state. And gradually, you internalize the truth that life is a reflection of sustained consciousness, that the flow of abundance mirrors the steadiness of your inner state, and that mastery over wealth requires both patience and persistence in holding the feeling of having already received. And through this practice, external circumstances begin to align as naturally as breathing, confirming the power of your imagination and assumptions. And as you persist without wavering, every interaction, decision, and situation becomes an expression of your inner mastery, and the shadow of limitation continues to fade, replaced by the tangible presence of wealth, opportunity, and freedom, proving that consistent inner alignment, supported by patience and perseverance, is the ultimate key to commanding abundance effortlessly. And in this realization, you move through life with ease, assurance, and an unwavering confidence that everything you desire will continue to flow into your experience, precisely because you have mastered the inner art of patient, persistent creation. And as patience and persistence solidify your alignment, you begin to perceive money not as an object but as energy, a dynamic flow that responds to the quality and consistency of your consciousness. And when you shift your perception in this way, you realize that the external accumulation of wealth is simply a reflection of the energy you emit, so that fear, doubt, or resistance constricts flow, while clarity, confidence, and alignment expand it. And as this understanding deepens, you notice that your thoughts, feelings, and intentions are not separate from the energy of money, but are the very channels through which it moves. And when you consciously maintain a state of abundance, the shadow of scarcity dissolves into tangible manifestations, and every decision, opportunity, and interaction becomes infused with the energy you consistently project, so that the universe responds with precision to your inner state. And it becomes clear that money, like any form of energy, multiplies and accelerates when met with openness, faith, and expectation. And even obstacles, delays, or apparent setbacks function as recalibrations, ensuring that your energy remains aligned with the reality you have assumed. And as you consistently inhabit this energetic state, you observe how circumstances, people, and resources converge in perfect harmony with your intentions, creating the effortless flow that Neville described. And in this process, you recognize that abundance is never truly external, but an energetic reflection of the consciousness you maintain. And the more clearly and persistently you hold the vibration of wealth, the more tangible the shadow of money becomes, materializing in ways that feel both natural and inevitable. And with each passing day, the alignment between your inner energy and external experience strengthens, reinforcing the understanding that the mastery of money is inseparable from mastery over the energy you emit. And as this energy becomes habitual, every choice, interaction, and opportunity reinforces the flow of abundance until scarcity no longer has influence, and the shadow transforms completely into substance, confirming that financial freedom, prosperity, and opportunity are inseparable from the energy of consciousness you cultivate. And in this realization, you move through life knowing that money flows effortlessly to you as a reflection of your inner vibrational state, creating a reality in which abundance is constant, tangible, and fully aligned with the life you imagine. And as you fully embrace the understanding that money is energy, you begin to notice how case studies of manifested wealth reflect the same principles, revealing that those who have achieved extraordinary abundance have done so not through struggle or external manipulation, but by consistently aligning their inner state with the reality they wish to experience. And when you examine their lives, you see a pattern of imagination, assumption, feeling, and persistence, a seamless integration of consciousness with desire, and it becomes evident that external circumstances always follow inner conviction, so that opportunities, people, and resources appear in perfect timing, confirming the reality of the state assumed. And as you internalize these examples, you recognize that manifestation is not about luck or chance, but about the deliberate cultivation of inner alignment, where every thought, feeling, and assumption acts as a creative force, shaping outcomes with precision. And even challenges serve as markers, indicating where belief must be reinforced, and when those internal adjustments are made, the shadow of money solidifies into substance, creating tangible, measurable results. And as you continue to study and emulate these patterns, your confidence in your own ability to manifest grows, revealing that wealth is a natural byproduct of consistently assuming the feeling of already having it. And every success story, every synchronized event, and every unexpected opportunity confirms the universality of this law. And in observing these manifestations, you see that scarcity exists only where inner assumptions are inconsistent or weak, and that abundance flows effortlessly to those who have mastered the art of assumption, feeling, and alignment. And through this understanding, you realize that your own life can mirror these examples, that the shadow of money can take form in every area of your existence, and that by consciously embodying the states these case studies demonstrate, you are creating not just temporary gains, but a lasting, self-sustaining reality of wealth, freedom, and opportunity, proving that the principles of manifestation are not theoretical, but practical, reliable, and accessible to anyone willing to assume, feel, and persist in the reality they desire. And in this recognition, you step fully into the certainty that the life you imagine is not only possible, but inevitable, and that abundance has always been waiting for you to claim it. And as you arrive at the culmination of this journey, you begin to see the totality of Neville's radical idea that money is a shadow. Realizing that every insight, assumption, and feeling you have cultivated has been preparing you to step fully into a reality where abundance is not a distant goal but an inseparable part of your existence. And when you integrate all the lessons, the power of imagination, the assumption of feeling, the mastery of self-worth, the clarity of identity, the practice of gratitude, the energy of generosity, and the steady alignment of patience, persistence, and faith, you recognize that wealth, opportunity, and freedom have always been present, waiting only for you to claim them consciously. And as this understanding deepens, every part of your life begins to reflect the inner state you maintain, transforming ordinary moments into evidence of the reality you have imagined. And the shadow of money that once seemed elusive now appears fully tangible, perfectly synchronized with your thoughts, feelings, and assumptions. And as you continue to live with clarity, confidence, and unwavering alignment, you notice how effortlessly circumstances, people, and opportunities converge to support the life you desire. And even challenges now function as guides, redirecting you gently toward greater refinement of your inner state. And in this integration, you recognize that mastery is not an external achievement, but a natural outcome of consistent internal alignment. And every decision, interaction, and opportunity becomes an extension of the abundance you inhabit, reinforcing the flow and confirming that money, wealth, and prosperity are inseparable from the consciousness that generates them. And as you move through life with this understanding fully embodied, the need for struggle, chasing, or striving disappears, replaced by effortless flow, perfect timing, and a deep sense of certainty, and the shadow of limitation dissolves entirely, leaving only the substance of abundance, clarity, and freedom. And in this final awareness, you realize that having it all has never been about external acquisition, but about fully mastering the inner world, consistently assuming the life you desire and allowing the shadow to take form as tangible reality, so that every moment becomes an opportunity to live as though wealth, happiness, and freedom are already yours. Confirming that the ultimate secret to abundance lies not in what is outside you, but in the consciousness you cultivate within. And through this understanding, you step into life fully empowered, knowing that the shadow of money is now solid, tangible, and perfectly aligned with the life you have imagined and assumed.